So my name is Yannick. A few of you, those who are in our webinar already know me. I work as a recruiter for Computer Futures, specifically focused on everything related for data. So going from data engineers, scientists, AI, everything in that matter. I think the most important reason for you to know why we are doing this is to connect people. The most have the image of a recruiter that mainly they are people with the irrelevant emails or the annoying phone calls. But we're trying to do it a bit different and work with our own community. So a few years ago, we started setting up our webinars and meetups. I think we noticed as recruiter and myself, I talked with a lot of interesting people who wanted to share their knowledge, but didn't always find the right platform. So often the knowledge stayed with them or with us. And like this webinar, I want to make sure that the knowledge can be spread and the people get the right platform. I think the community we're trying to create will only benefit from each other. So in the end, this will be our goal. In this case, it will be oneness. So you're not here to hear me talk about computer futures or recruitment. So I'll give the word to Wannes, and he will start off. Maybe just one last intermezzo is that let's make it the webinar as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can ask Wannes or you can write it down in chat and I'll ask Wannes instead. But I think it will be the best to make it interactive as possible. All right?
Thanks,
So,
Yannick. And
yeah.
indeed, feel free to interrupt me at all times. It's probably most easier if the right content is still on the slides, then ask at the end of the session. So yeah, the first slide, I have to mention I'm working at DPG Media, and most of the talks I will be handling is around how we tackle everything regarding fast-moving technology at DPG Media in data. But a bit of my background, from a study, I have done a PhD in mathematics, so everything regarding data science is even more interesting than purely data engineering for me. Yet currently I lead the data engineering team of DPG Media. I always say that the biggest thing I've learned there is to embrace failure, because the main breakthrough during my PhD is finding a counterexample of something I was trying to prove for already 3 months. So I'm really a huge fan of failing fast, because if I would have failed after 2 weeks and found a counterexample, that would have saved me 2.5 months during my PhD. After that, I've took a small side step being a professional volleyball player, making sure what benefits there for me is that I have a quite good feeling of group dynamics and how to make sure that within a certain group you can move to a specific goal and try to reach that. I've started my professional career at Kronos, so a consultancy group where I was the founder of Infoform. Left there after 3 years because I've noticed that I didn't like consultancy, which is quite difficult in a consulting group. I started off later on at Ascent Belgium, which is part of Ascent Belgium, of Ascent Netherlands, and then from Energy, a large European group comparable to, for example, Engie, where I had the opportunity to build the data platform from scratch. They were moving source systems and they were in a phase that they needed to build something new for data as well. So they said, here's an AWS account, please fill it in as desired. But also in the large European group, I was the data science lead, mostly advising local companies on what they do. And then last year I ended up at DPG Media, which is a 5,000 plus FTE company, including all journalists, a 500 IT people company, and of them there's 40 data engineers. My team starts with tagging and tracking, and from there the typical data engineering, cloud data engineering. Next to that, I'm also responsible for a new product which should become a new highly personalized product, and with all machine learning involved, that's why it ends up with me. but it's a quite broad range in being able to work from scratch and setting up a data environment, or coming into a company that has already evolved for quite a while, because I've just entered at DBG Media last year and they already had some history before looking how we can move forward on what has already been built. And today I will be talking on how to move along in the fast moving world of data-driven technology. First thing I want to say is, yes, we have quite a complex system, and I saw this quote. It's not that bad if a system is complex, yet if you have designed it as a complex system, then probably you have done something wrong. But you know that over time, IT systems get elaborated upon, and in the end, you most of the time end up with what I call a spaghetti architecture. But the main goal is, whatever is possible, keep it as simple as possible. Agenda from today, I'll first be looking at DBG Media before I've entered their on-premise past, coming from a traditional BI environment, first time introducing the new big data technology, then the move to the cloud, because it sounds even cooler when you do big data in the cloud, and then how we've ended up, well, more or less today, or at least the last year. So how we ended up with that spaghetti architecture, and we also tried to unravel it, making it more simple again, and then ending up with a future vision. So first, one more slide as introduction. Fast moving technology. I've put here a very simplified 2013 version. This was the big data ecosystem, or at least the Hadoop ecosystem in 2013. If you look to the 2020 version of all tools that are there, I think we can truly say this is still a very fast moving field. Nothing is always the same as last year, both in new tools as in new versions, and trying to catch up with the latest things. And I guess most of you are quite familiar with the issues coming along with trying up to speed with what's out there. So the on-premise chapter, looking more or less 4 years ago at DPG Media. Of course, it's a company that always needed to have some data insights, none in the least knowing how much newspapers you should print. And typically we had an Oracle environment and we had SAP BO reports. So very traditional toolings offered by big companies. Also a bit of a vendor lock in there, yet it worked. And then 4 years ago, or a bit more, 2015 maybe, they decided to look to the first big data technology, choosing for Hortonworks, because at that time Hortonworks, Cloudera, or a bit less also MapR, but not in Europe. We're introducing most of those tools together in a commercial package, working together. And why was DPG Media looking to that? Mainly for technology's sake. Not really covering new use cases, but it's out there. It's widely spread. Probably we should need to do something with it. We don't know what, but let's already introduce it into our ecosystem. And from there on, try to move forward. And then in come the data engineer. So suddenly you're in need for new people having new skills. And it already, while it was an introduction for technology's sake, it also covered some issues. They were there. Certainly people were able to allow data access to all data there was at DBG Media. In the next step, when you also go to cloud, you could tackle some cost and scalability issues. Yet it also introduced new problems. As said, suddenly you require new people, and there are not that many out there. A lot of the jobs are running quite long, and suddenly by centralizing all data ownership is gone, and no one really actually knows what is which data. But the main issue at that moment in time was indeed that it's operated by a team of hyper-specialized data engineers. So that was the first issue to be tackled at DBG Media. They started off with a first team, what we call a squad, looking for 5 data engineers. And as said, currently we were, for Belgium and Netherlands, about 40 right now. Then the move to the cloud, because it was a first introduction. And again, cloud, the company went all in for cloud technology. By end of next year, so 2021, most of all applications will be running on AWS, and we will only have a small on-premise footprint. Yeah, again, that also brings some new technology. So we've chosen to go for AWS first, not AWS only, but if multiple clouds have the same kind of tooling, we will always prefer the AWS tooling. But it's allowed, for example, to take something from Google, from Azure, or something else. And there were a few design principles. We really go out from the fact you build it, you run it. That means from the moment on a team starts building something, they're also operationally responsible for it. And there, together with the third item, we were focusing on searching new value. We also have the concept of backpack. So that are those things you need to maintain, but actually you would want to get rid of. But because of focusing on searching new value and always introducing new technology, suddenly you need to maintain other items as well. In our case, the Hortonworks, the Oracle environment, the BO reports. And fair to say, after 5 years, really moving forward to the new technology, really moving forward to the cloud, we hardly have no knowledge of those systems left anymore, yet we need to maintain them because they're still critical business processes running on top of it. Another design principle was giving architectural responsibility to each squad. So each group of 5 to 6 people got their own AWS environment, and they're free to go and to build whatever they want and use which technology they want. By telling it so, I think this is one of the main reasons that we really moved towards the spaghetti architecture, as I was calling it, because everyone has the freedom to bring in new tools, of course, for their purposes, yet it wasn't really aligned throughout the entire DPG media. And if you look, for example, to what we have still in our on-premise backpack, we're currently building our 5th subscription system at IT, not because we really like subscription systems, but because we grew by acquisitions. Most of them are still running on-premise. One of the use cases we have is to get an overview of customers, so matching customers from subscription system 1 to those belonging to subscription system 2. It's an old legacy environment. So as said, it's an application currently running on top of a Windows 2008 server, which isn't really supported, but in extended support. So we really have now deadlines security-wise. We should get rid of this next year, but we're always focusing on new value, but so we don't really have the time to phase this out. Later on, it's an Oracle environment. Later on, it's materialized views. Having stored procedures of 1,000 lines of SQL code. Again, no one really knows it anymore. It's a lot of logic sitting somewhere in a backpack, which still is useful for the company, but is in contrary to being able to move fast forward, because you have to move this along with you. And if you then look to what the organization did, as said, every squad has its own AWS account. It's a nightmare to schedule all dependencies. It's a nightmare to know which data is where throughout the company. And although every team started off with a fork of the blueprint, the architectural blueprint of the first squad, it's ran completely out of hand. So really having dependencies, different architectures, and this is where we more or less went 1 to 2 years ago. Any questions on the history and how we've gotten here? Assuming silence means no.
So it's very clear, man. It's very clear.
Yeah, and I don't see any questions in chat as well. So
So what we've ended up with, and I say that's the state we had more or less 1 year ago. Yes, it's centralized. We have all data available in a central place. Also, the on-premise data is copied to the cloud. So there's one big pile or lake of data, yet it's still a monolith. And it's domain agnostic. It's operated by more or less 40 people who should know all systems being built by 500 IT people for 5,000 people in the company. You cannot expect of all data engineers that they know every system and every domain as they should. So quite a lot of business knowledge is lost in building this central data lake. So that's where we were, well, now and 1 year ago, and probably also within the upcoming months still, but we're trying to move forward and how we're doing that. So first of all, a few questions to all of you. Do you know these situations? Having a data set available, but you don't know who's using it. I guess it's quite familiar. I know Chris, and I see he's scratching his face, so I know he really understands what I'm meaning with it. And probably it's relevant for most of you. But same thing, having a tool, but you don't know all users. Again, we're having, for example, a ClickView environment of 400 licenses, a BO environment of 700 licenses. We really don't know who's using which license anymore throughout the company. Or we even have an application, we don't know who uses it, but even worse, we even don't know why they're using it for. These are all situations that we unfortunately have or had. As said, this story is mainly on how we moved forward. So it's quite fair to say we're there. We're not yet completely away from this picture, but it were all issues we were running into. So how did we move forward? By really being bold, by daring sometimes to take risks to move forward. For example, if you don't know who's using something, try switching it off. Users will start complaining that something's not running, and suddenly you have an insight on who's using it, and you also can ask them why they're using it. From the moment on, we try to phase something out, really phase it out and define an end of life date and communicate that well. So where typically DPG Media is a company that really moves fast, which is an advantage, but also a disadvantage. We're most of the time in the phase that we've phased out 80% of a tool, yet for 20% of the usage, we still need it. So they're really be strict in, no, we're going to switch it off. We're going to unplug the application, for example, 1st of November, and that's it. That's mostly on making sure that whatever is out there in your backpack, you can get rid of, but also for the future, really perform proof of concepts, define them, what you want to prove and how to continue, and then dare to change. If proof of concept is successfully, really dare to switch within your company. And for some items, if there are changes, do benefit to make more than one change at a time as well. So looking to what we did, yes, we've unplugged quite a lot of applications, seeing who's complaining. We've really sent out emails to the entire company. We're going to phase out this system and it's unavailable as of 1st of November. If you need work to switch over, please contact us. And for the applications that we don't understand, really start looking into what it is, because you can always go out from the fact it has been running 6 months quite stable now. So let's hope it will do the same for the next 6 months, but I can guarantee you it will fall over at some moment in time. And even though these decisions go wrong once in a while, for example, one time we phased out a BO environment having financial reports, and suddenly there was an issue with the month closing because people from the finance team didn't know it was on their BO environment. On the BO environment we were phasing out. Still, in most of the cases, it really gives us an insight that is really useful, and it makes us moving forward. So even though it goes wrong once in a while, it benefits quite a lot of daring to take those risks. And if you then look to a typical migration project, we now have some guiding principles. So from the moment on we've decided to migrate, and later on I'll give the example, we've taken the decision to move from Redshift to Snowflake. From the moment you take the decision, we stop developing in the old system. So we don't want to introduce new legacy from the moment on we're moving forward. We also want to abuse existing, for example, source migrations. As said, we have a 500 IT department. There's quite a lot of people building certain systems. Again, the Redshift to Snowflake migration, someone is already moving the subscription system. Well, use that move at one of the sources to move forward on your own migration effort as well. And then prioritize other workloads based on synergies. For us, that's mainly Belgium-Netherlands synergies, having two still quite separate businesses to support, but also look for quick wins. And as said, really phase out the last final 20%, because otherwise you're just making your backpack bigger and bigger. And in the end, yes, you have a team of 40 data engineers, but they cannot build anything new because they're just maintaining what is there. So the example, Snowflake, which is a Redshift alternative. Anyone not familiar with Redshift or Snowflake or what it's for? No questions. So really quick, it's the underlying infrastructure for our BI environment. We've had some issues with Redshift, mainly regarding concurrency scaling. Having a morning peak of many people opening up their reports starts putting queries in queues and reports being really late in delivery. So we were looking around. We did a proof of concept with Snowflake, a cloud native data warehouse technology. We've performed a proof of concept in 1 week. So we've clearly defined these are the goals we want to prove. Take one data set, yet the biggest one, mock the amount of people during the morning peak, and see what it does for performance reasons, because that's the main thing we want to tackle. At the end of the week, we're proving that opening up a typical report on Redshift took us 16 minutes plus. Opening it up on Snowflake went to under 1 minute. Clearly, we had a goal of the proof of concept. We've proved value, and we've decided to move forward with it. 2 weeks later, we had a signed contract with a estimated consumption for the next 2 years, with a migration plan on top of it as well. So the consumption won't be as big in the first month as in the end of the last 2 years. Then you suddenly have a tool, yet you still need to introduce. You have a contract, but it's not used. We've set it up during what we call a co-location day, and that's bringing people from multiple teams together and trying to build something with a specific goal. So having the signed contract, it took us 1 day to introduce the infrastructure, load the first data sets, connect it to a dashboard tool, and build the first dashboard. So having nothing in the morning, we had first production ready dashboards at the end of the day. By bringing correct people together, data engineers together with people that knew the data, together with a dashboard specialist. We've locked them in a virtual room due to Corona, but those 6 people could only leave the Google Meet Hangout if at the end of the day the report was there. So now moving forward, we've decided, yes, we want to switch. So that means you should also look into really moving forward. So, as said, we don't want to keep the last 20% at the end as well. So we need to have a plan on how to go. So looking to our design principles, we said, well, first thing is every new project should directly have been built on top of the new technology. We had a migration project from an on-premise Microsoft BI environment. They are now ready to start having a cloud data warehouse. Well, there's no choice. Although they will be the guinea pigs to start using it on Snowflake, they are not allowed anymore to use Redshift because we've decided this is our future-proof solution and we won't introduce new legacy. We're building the new subscription system, so everything regarding B2C data can best be linked together with the go live of the new subscription system, because we don't want to migrate right now some kind of code which is deprecated next year. That's wasted technology. So end of next year, end of 2021, there's a big chunk and a big release of the subscription system. Let's make sure that on that time, we're ready with a new data warehouse on top of that new system. And again, directly build it on top of Snowflake, not anymore on Redshift. And it's most of the time combined in reports together with our tracking data and our tracking history, which contains 14 months of history. Let's make sure that this entire history is moved as well together at the same moment in time. So they're linked together to the migration of a source system. Then look to synergies. The first project we are going to build right now is for B2B Belgium. Then again, we have synergies across borders. Let's bring the cloud data warehouse, which is already there in the Netherlands, to the same environment so that the Belgium and the Dutch team can collaborate and trying to find the synergy in there, because most of the time they're using the same data sources. Not having to build twice something quite similar. And then the final thing, also look for quick wins. So as said, the subscription data is mostly reported upon together with tracking data. Yet one of the items we want to do for tracking is being able to report on real-time data, where Redshift isn't that good because it mainly works on top of bulk inserts, so buffering some data and then loading it into Redshift, where Snowflake is a much better alternative. So let's already start ingesting in real time, but only a small set of history for other use cases than those belonging to the combined reports with customer and tracking data. So that means we already give insights to, for example, journalists on how certain articles are behaving, how many times they are clicked, opened, stuff like that. This again also will help in an agile way of working, that the go live end of 2021 is much easier because the data is already there. They can already start creating reports, okay, only on 1 month of history and not 14 months of history, but they already have the data available in the same kind of schema to move their reports. Any questions on such an example of a migration project?
Yes, I have a question, Wannes. So what I'm basically wondering is, one of the big unknowns in such a migration is how your cost is also going to be compared. And I wondered what you did. Is it also just purely on the POC of the week, 1 week that you did, that you said, okay, this is going to give us a good enough estimate of the cost? Because if I'm right, Redshift, your cost is not based on usage, but with Snowflake it is.
It's indeed different. Redshift is you pay what you use, and there's a small unknown regarding concurrency scaling, which you can turn on. Yet it's not anymore unknown because we already use it for a few months. So we have the actual cost, but most is even predictable when you wouldn't know. Whereas Snowflake is indeed usage based. So that's also one of the main reasons why we've taken the biggest data source during the proof of concept, to see whether we could benefit from a small warehouse or a medium or a large warehouse within Snowflake. So to know the instance type you would need. And next to that, during the 2 weeks, the 2 weeks between the proof of concept and the signing the contract, we're focusing on estimating the cost of Snowflake as well, both based on the proof of concept and the lessons learned from there, plus as well on which data will still need to get there, how much ETL do we foresee based on what we currently see in Redshift. So we've made the estimation based on data size and ETL size and access of data via reporting tools. Will it be perfect? Probably not, but it gave us an insight in the price range. And for us, we've noticed that the estimation we've made is cheaper than Redshift. So probably even if we've underestimated it, it will be the same price range.
Okay, thanks.
So continuing, being bold and daring also gave us more insights. So currently we only own 2 more systems that we really don't know why they're used for. And they're on the agenda for this or next quarter to find out what they're for and if we could switch them off. We have a smaller on-premise environment, so we've switched off all servers which we didn't need. We've patched and supported everything, well, everything, but we have one system in extended support. But security-wise, we're much more comfortable with what is running there. For example, we've merged three ingestion systems into one new one, having a smaller amount of tools which we need to maintain. For every software that's out there, we only have one version. So we've made sure that we've aligned all versions to make sure that we always talk about the same things. And where possible and required, we've also introduced managed services. So offloading the maintenance time for the entire team. Going out from the fact we build what is strategic important for us, we try to not build ourselves what isn't. For example, having a Kubernetes environment, yes, we use it, but we shouldn't maintain it, as an example. So looking to the future, where we're heading now and what is most important for us, we really want to focus on what matters. So as said, we want to build what is strategically important for us. We don't want to do something else than that. So we want to move towards a slender and loosely coupled data landscape, because if from that spaghetti where everything is depending on each other, you go to a loosely coupled landscape, you can always just pick out one tool and replace it by another one. As Redshift and Snowflake is one example, but there's other items in the past where it wasn't that easy to see a change from one team. So if you mainly look to the systems going from source to consumer, then we're responsible for tracking, setting up GTM containers, introducing Snowplow, stuff like that. And then there's systems being built by other IT areas. Areas are teams or multiple teams working on one product or platforms. For example, the customer service area is those teams that are building a subscription system. We're trying to ingest all data to a cloud environment, registering it in a universal data catalog. So where previously every squad had its own AWS account and you wouldn't know which data is to be found where, we now have a centrally catalog available where you can find all data with its belonging metadata. And from there on, we have three major not really use cases, but domains of use cases, which is B2C, where you have consumer insights, where you have remarketing use cases, which is B2B, where you have lookalike advertising segments, but also insights about your sales and advertising. And we have what we call the profile service, which is a real-time aggregate of usage behavior. So it gives quite a well understanding of what's in there about the consumer, and it's used for content and video personalization, or in the near future also something like a Facebook Business Manager-like tool, where an advertiser can create its own segment.
Hannes, I have a question in chat. Someone asks if you have a common data model over all your data sets.
Currently, yes, yet we're longing to go away from that. And I'll explain that in 2 or 3 slides. But currently, for example, B2C has one common data model, which we call the single customer view. But as said, I'll pick in where I think it's not relevant, why I think it's not relevant anymore. And then there's a few tools we need to support. So regarding scheduling of processes, the processing and infrastructure and stuff like that. So as a data team, we should ask ourselves what is relevant for what we need and for what we need to do. And that's why I was going to tell it, the common data model is not really interested, I think, for us. Because as said, we have 40 data engineers, 500 IT people. We don't know all the domains that are out there. And we want to move forward organizationally wise to what is called a data mesh. Technology wise, it's the same tools as a data lake, yet you want to bring responsibility more closer to the teams that are actually understanding the business domain. So that are, for example, actually understanding the customer domain and the subscription. So there we want to move forward to bringing the responsibility of delivering a data set. This is what we consider as being a customer. This is what we consider as being a subscription, to the teams that are actually building the subscription system. Instead of ingesting it in a central data lake and having those 40 data engineers building a common data model, where a lot of business knowledge is gone. So that's why I don't think in the end having one common data model is the way to go. Yet you want to have data products which include all business logic which should be included. And then you can start building on top of data products.
Does that mean that you have a more decentralized view on data now instead of a data lake?
Yeah, it's as said, it's technology-wise, it's the same. So we'll have a data lake, a universal data catalog available where everyone can see which data products are in there. Yet building and feeding it we will move indeed to a more decentralized way. It's something we're currently moving into. So if Yannick wants to invite me next year, I can give you more insights. But the main reasons is having the logic within the teams that know the systems and having the governance of tools with people from my area because we know the technology. So there is a bit of shift. So how we are going to create that governance is still a bit unclear to us.
Can I ask I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Please go. No, please go. I was interrupted.
If you exchange data like in decentralized view, that means that there is a big role to be played by the streaming platform or technology that you're using to exchange, to move the data all the time between the different components and business domains in your organization.
It's a bit both. It's not only streaming, it's all the batch system, yet there you're more certain that it will work. But for every data product, we will see whether data for certain use cases should be enclosed in a streaming way of working or more in a batch system. But indeed, it will get a bigger load on what we mainly do on Kinesis and SNS QSQs. So yeah, we are aware of that fact.
Can I ask another question about that data mesh? Where do you put the responsibilities, like for the data catalog and for the monitoring and seeing that everything is okay?
Maintaining the catalog will be set centrally. Defining monitoring principles and guidelines will be set centrally, yet building the monitoring and feeding the catalog will be decentralized. So for example, currently our universal data catalog is a sync of glue data catalogs. Centrally, we've built something that links glue data catalogs across AWS accounts. And the only thing the decentralized teams need to do is using our Python or Scala write function in Spark to register data there and make it centrally available. So that's a bit the division there.
And if one team wants to evolve their schema, how do you manage that?
Still B2C. We want to consider this as a sort of API contract. So most of the times we want them not to change their schemas, because that's one of the main advantages we see, because typically every new update of a system will break your data landscape, and this is there to prevent that. So probably there will come some kind of governance, just like what it would mean to change your API.
Okay, thanks. Great.
So that means if you were looking to our landscape, and currently I'm focusing on the first ingestion part, we've already at a certain moment in time that it's quite slender, loosely coupled, and it includes quite a lot of managed services. So for ingestion, when it's on a stream, it's mostly on a Kinesis stream hosted by AWS. And for our tracking data, which is Snowplow data, it's even hosted by Snowplow itself. And for batch ingest, we use Scoop. It's managed by the central team, yet it's running on EMR, and it comes along with EMR. From there, we register it in a typical data lake. So we have raw data and we have derived data, which is cleaned and transformed, running on top of S3. And it's registered in that universal data catalog, which is Glue, infrastructure-wise hosted by AWS, and the wrapper function hosted by the central data team. And then everything regarding processing, Kubernetes on top of Spark, scheduled by Airflow. That's a tool which is called Datafy, which is managed by a partner. So we have clear responsibilities for every tool, but what will change in the near future is that currently the data area, its responsibility starts at fetching data somewhere, and in the near future we want to move that to people should offer data products, and from there on someone else can build on top of it, instead of trying to fetch it and trying to understand every system. And then what we also want to do is we want to be able to keep changing components with a quick time to market. So if you were looking to the last year, what we have been doing from the moment on we saw, our spaghetti architecture needs some redesign. The first thing we did was introducing that universal data catalog, trying not to phase out, for example, AWS accounts, but trying to benefit as soon as possible from a central overview. The V1 was built in 1 month. It was rolled out to 6 AWS accounts, so from 6 different teams in 2 more months. And now we will see whether this tool still supports whatever we need for governance regarding those data mesh principles. Then in March this year, we've introduced Datafy, so the managed Kubernetes Airflow Spark environment. The first pipeline was moved in just 1 week. And now a few months later, we already switched off 2 other Airflow environments. A third one is more or less empty, so we're coming to a smaller amount of tools we need to maintain, and it's already currently been used by 40 plus people. As said, we've moved to 1 ingestion system where we went for Scoop. We've decided that during the summer, the first version mainly focusing on fetching data in a table in a typical database was there after 2 weeks. It's configurable, so it has a wrapper around it where it just registers which credentials database and stuff like that. 2 months later, we phased out the on-prem alternatives. And now we're together with users switching over, because making sure that people don't need the on-premise or other alternatives we had is making sure that they start consuming the data sets provided by the new tools. And having that universal data catalog in the near future will help us if you want to do a step again like this, because they're now consuming via the catalog and not anymore from, for example, S3 paths. So we can start moving data around as much as we want, making sure that we can benefit quite a lot. In September, we've noticed that we had a tag management system next to Google Tag Manager with a termination date coming up. we've decided to migrate it in 1 week, having a cost efficiency, saving 42,000 euro next year, contract-wise, but also again having one less system to maintain. Now we did a Snowflake proof of concept, as said, successful in 1 week, 2 weeks to contract, 1 day to production, and a plan of attack available to migrate from Redshift to Snowflake. And the ambition for 2021 is to limit a set of reporting tools, because I always say name a reporting tool, and unfortunately I can tell you we have it. We have the ambition to go a bit smaller by having more or less 3
webinar.
tools. And we already have a plan of attack for
wat van DPG.
So that's mainly the story I was going to tell. Are there any questions?
There are no questions in chat as well, FYI. Meaning you are doing a very well job.
We have been talking about data architecture, but how does the application architecture follows this evolution? Are they just going to be the consumers of the data that will be made available through an API, or will the data be pushed to applications someday?
We have different ways. So for certain use cases, data is indeed made available either to a report or to a flat file, offering it to a data science tool, for example. Yet mainly looking to what is called a profile service, which is a system that integrates back with operational systems. So that's feasible as well, where data is offered via API back to, for example, the front ends of the websites for personalization use cases, but also back to the subscription system for search use cases, so that you can not keep the entire history of certain systems in every tool, yet offload it to the data lake or data mesh and making sure that it gets available as well. So mostly either sending data towards a system or opening it up via API as well.
Okay. Do you allow other business domains in your data mesh to build a view on top of the data being generated elsewhere in the other business domains?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why you definitely need that monitoring and some metadata on to make sure that they understand the data that's there, to make sure that they can benefit of using it. So where we're currently focusing on opening up the first data sets coming from the source. So this is a customer, this is a subscription. People can start reusing it, but also can start reusing the data product built on top of the original data mesh. So it can be a data product on top of a data product on top.
Okay. And how is the business involved in all this? Do you have business owners that are the owner of a specific business domain and that they are involved in all this, or?
Our IT was divided in what we called areas. So those are focused on domains, having a customer service area, a marketing area, and stuff like that. They now get the ownership of the data that's in there. And from there, they are involved as well. So it's the business domain and the business people itself that are making sure that the right data gets into the data mesh.
Wannes, I have another question because you just mentioned that it's going to be possible to build data views and stuff. So how would you manage query rights in terms of GDPR, making sure that not everyone has access to all the data, but you can limit it to only the ones who really need the information?
Yeah, currently 2 items. On top of Redshift, which is currently still our reporting system, there it's aligned via EIM policies, which users can see which data. But I think more relevant is on the raw data that is still available to build your data products as well. There we're looking into. Currently in the Universal Data Catalog, we have different schemas and you can set access rights to schemas. So for example, the subscription team will write it to a subscription schema and only a few people that are relevant will get access there. But within the data mesh principle, looking to what is called DATSIS principles, discoverability, addressability, security, stuff like that. We will looking into the fact whether this is sufficient for our requirements as well, or that we should introduce a tool like, for example, Colibra, or an open source tool like Amundsen. More questions?
How important is that being able to react in real time for the organization, for the business owners, for the business projects? How important is that becoming? Do you see a move as well as being able to do that, to make your data actionable as soon as possible? Is that something that lives within the organization?
Or many business users are asking for real-time data access, but you can definitely be challenged. Why would you really need this? Yet for insights on behavior on our media platforms, it is quite relevant. Which article is performing well? Should we put it on the homepage? Stuff like that. There it becomes really important to make sure that you can bring real-time data. Plus as well, if you start really moving into a completely personalized product, as I was mentioning, we're currently also building, then you need the latest data available as well, because otherwise you would miss the breaking stories as well to be able to offer. So there's a high need, which I think is really relevant to offer data in real time. And then, for example, for remarketing purposes, I can understand that people want to have data available as soon as possible, but it's discussable whether you want to send an email based on a click right now, or if it's fine to do that within an hour or within a day as well.
I also have a more practical or maybe political question. Sorry, but you want to separate your data by business entities, you could say. You're an organization that grew and maybe will grow by acquisitions. So how fast or how optimistic are you that you will be able to adapt your organization also quickly to this schema? So incorporating the different business units from the new company into yours, so that they can align on their business, their data schemas and stuff.
Yep, we've recently acquired Sanoma Netherlands, which is more or less size-wise a quarter of the group we already had. So it's not a small acquisition. And there, business-wise, most teams are already merged a few months after. Quick wins are created to merge source systems where they're close enough, and there's already a plan of attack to merge other source systems as well. So what we still need to do now is whether, based on that plan, for example, the subscription system for Sanoma Netherlands will only be merged probably end of 2024. What do we need to do at the data side? But the first thing there is indeed, on most domains, it goes quite fast, and data will get merged into the organizationally wise into what we need. So there I'm happy, I can say I'm in a company that moves fast forward. And from those few specific domains where that doesn't, then indeed it probably belongs to a central team stepping in and making sure that you fill in the blanks there.
Okay, Yannick, will you make the recording available afterwards?
Yes.
If my colleague cannot follow, so.
Yeah, we will do. So afterwards, my colleague Christian, he's will share the recording. Maybe send me an email if you have a specific request, and I'll send it directly to you. Wannes also will have the recording, and most likely, but I'm not sure it will be the complete webinar. It also will be online, but it might be edited in this case.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. In the meantime, I have no specific or any questions in chat anymore, Wannes.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah, I think
Thanks, Hannes.
some people who are having questions, but I think most of them are being asked or already asked. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Wannes, for your very good presentation, I must say.
Oh,
Thanks.
very nice. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Wannes.
Thank you, Wannes.